Hello and welcome to The Nation. I'm Gerard, Ratnam. Today we delve into a deeply challenging topic that affects countless lives across the world and also across the country. We're fortunate to have with us KAVILAN and GUKACUMARAN, who is here to talk about standing against domestic violence or abuse, and he's the operations director for Next Chapter. KAVILAN, thank you very much for taking time off to be with us. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
There's just so much to talk about with regards to domestic abuse or violence. Now, I think I'd like to start this by trying to get a sense of what domestic abuse is, violence is. Is there a difference?
I think it's just the terminology. It's coined and it means the same thing.
Right.
So abuse and violence is the same thing.
Right, abuse and violence is the same thing.
It just, I guess the only thing that makes a difference here is how much.
Right, so if that's taken to court, can that be used as a technicality? Abuse against violence. You know, semantics play a big role, especially when it comes to going to courts.
I think domestic violence would be the right word in terms of...
all-encompassing, so to speak, although it's bad. Now, let's talk about the current state of domestic abuse in Malaysia. Give us a sense of what it is like in Malaysia. Years ago, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, we were told it was really prevalent. Then I don't know, as time moved on, becoming a developed nation, and we're still developing, or at least that's what I hear.
Yes.
Are we doing any better?
No, because according to a PDRM stat that I just researched a few days ago, there has been a total of 22,908 cases from 2020.
Okay, so from 2020, now, the go-to crutch for things like this, say, yes, 2020 we just came out, or we were coming out of COVID-19, hence a lot of people were stuck at home, hence this was happening. So it's 22,000 cases from 2020. This is the latest numbers we have.
Yes, this is the latest.
And from that, okay, so I mean, all in all, that doesn't sound too good, 22,000 cases. Now, what do we know of these 22,000 cases?
Okay, from 22,908 cases, 27 of these have become murder/manslaughter, which is a number that is very disturbing, because we have taken abuse to a different level, and we have now come to a point of murder, and these are among married couples, which is quite worrying. Usually, when you think of the word domestic abuse or domestic violence, we usually stop at the beating, the bruising. It doesn't go to the level of murder. So I think this is something that we all really need to take a hard look at ourselves, like why does it even have to go that far?
Now, when you talk about something like this, it's always the next question that comes along would be, what is community doing about this thing?
Yes.
Last time it took a village to bring up a child. Today it takes a computer to develop a child. And things have changed so very much in this world now. They say communal help is always very important, the society knowing what's happening.
Yes.
What do you know about this, and how it plays out in townships and also in say, PPRs? Let's go there.
In PPRs, okay, I think the first thing is the lack of accessibility. Even though we are in an urban area, but people still are a bit lost when it comes to the word mental health, domestic abuse, domestic violence. So it has been a patriarchal attitude, and it has become a norm. And we have sort of normalized this kind of behavior in terms of when you talk about raising kids, when you talk about communication with your spouse, it has become a norm. And we are already at 2024. This needs to stop because it's kind of worrying. And probably in the previous times, it was a normal thing and no one really made any noise and no one really bothered too much. But now I think we have already come to a point where all of this really needs to stop.
Right. Yeah. I'd like to go to a statement by YB Dato Sri Haja Nancy Shukri, Minister of Women, Family and Community Development. And I'd like to apologize because I'm reading off my script.
Sure.
She talks about financial problems and how that has been identified as one of the primary factors contributing to domestic violence cases in the country. Now, I think just to move this forward a little bit, what strategies do you think should be implemented to empower survivors economically and break the cycle of financial dependency or abuse. But also backtracking, is there does this statement hold water?
Yes, it does, because I think most of the time when it comes to victims of abuse, they are being stripped of that power and that control to do what they want to do. So all that control and all that power is given to their abuser. So victims really don't have a say in what they want to do, and so that also backtracks to that financial literacy in terms like, okay, so I get married now, I drop everything on my husband or my spouse and they take care of everything, and then you sort of like, you probably put it on a silver platter and like, nah, this is the power, you can take it.
Right.
Yeah.
So wouldn't this then go back to, and I'm digressing here, okay, pull me back in when you want to.
Sure.
Wouldn't this then go back to when a couple is getting married, there are courses, there's this kursus kahwin for the Muslims. I know for certain Christian groups there's this engage evening for the engage before they get married, stuff like that.
Yes.
And I'm sure every other religion or every other denomination in the country from different religions would have a sort of an approximation of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that's a good place to start when a couple is getting married?
Yes.
To talk about financial resilience.
I think that would be the first topic to cover.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, these marriage courses and all, because I think a lot of times couples and divorces actually happen because of financial restrictions and a lot of financial control, and a lot of people they tend to go into this mode where, okay, I'm the head of the household, I control everything, you don't tell me what to do.
Right.
And vice versa. Right. Depending on who is the highest income earner, and there's a lot of variables that play into this.
Now, when you look at things happening, so saying if, you know, I have neighbors on the left, right of where I live, and I see something going a little bit out, something smells a little off. I know, with a couple.
Yep.
How can I identify signs of domestic violence in individuals, regardless of their gender, beyond the person coming out to disclose his or her experience? And of course, you know, no one's going to come and show you, my husband beat me up. You know, everyone tries to hide that.
Yep. Okay, so I think the first thing to look out for is the changes in behavior. Like, look for something that deviates from their normal behavior. So they would appear withdrawn, they would isolate themselves, and they will be very hesitant to actually open up and talk about whatever that's bugging them at home. Especially at home with their spouse, anything like that. Anything that is closely related to the abuse that's happening. And another thing also to look out for is controlling behavior when the spouse is actually around, or when the abuser is actually around. Like, there are a lot of limitations to what they say. There are a lot of phone call monitoring, a lot of it's like basically handing someone the remote control to your life. So simply put, that is what abuse is. Right. It's basically handing someone the remote control. This is my life, it's yours.
Now, you're a counselor, and a lot of you've worked with a lot of people,
yes,
and you still continue to work with a lot of people now. Yes, when you approach a client who is a survivor of domestic abuse, or is exhibiting symptoms of major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder, I mean, there are telltale signs. I'm sure you'll be able to pick it up straight away and try to dig further. But maybe tell us a story of something we've not heard before.
Okay.
I don't know if I caught you off guard.
Yes, no worries. I think I recently dealt with one client who has been going through this cycle of abuse following the divorce of her parents. So, started off from the age of 7, constant mental manipulation, constant verbal, physical manipulation, trying to make the child from that age feel really bad about herself, about anything, literally anything. Education, the way she dresses, everything. Everything becomes a problem. So, to a sense where the client sort of lost her sense of self. Like, who am I behind this version? So, there were a lot of times that I had to like And there were a lot of moments and instances during the session that she would just suddenly break down and not be able to verbalize what she's trying to feel inside. So that
that kind of ties into the sense of security.
Yep.
Okay, so if I'm being beaten to a bloody pulp by my husband, and if someone says, "Tell me about it," there must be protection that comes with it.
Yes.
And I guess with your work, how do you work hand in hand with the authorities in ensuring something like this happens? Sometimes it's not workable. The authorities have their hands filled with a lot of things sometimes, and I mean, that's putting it in a nice way. Sometimes they just don't care,
okay, when it comes to authorities, domestic abuse is only looked when it becomes a serious problem where you can see the visible bruises and injuries. Till then, anything verbal, emotional, all that is not counted and not seen as domestic abuse. So until you see the hard picture of that person with bruises and cuts and all, then okay, yes, this person is domestically abused.
Right. I'm going to digress again and talk about gaslighting.
Yep.
Something we never talk about. I don't know if there's a term in Bahasa Melayu for gaslighting. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
But yeah, I hope Shafiqah can Google this. But in the meantime, gaslighting is such a fine line, You don't know if the person's playing you or you really need to suss it out and read it. I mean, the best of us, even the most honest of us, sometimes gaslight people in not so hard ways. So gaslighting is become part of this whole abuse culture that a lot of people don't see it. You need to be trained to see it.
Okay, coming to gaslighting. Gaslighting is a very subtle form of abuse, a very subtle form of mental abuse. It's just that, like you mentioned earlier, you have to really see it for what it is. Because it can somehow appear as a backhanded compliment or a passive-aggressive statement. So sometimes it comes off like that. So you have to really know the person that you're talking to actually identify like if this person is being gaslighted or not.
Okay, just a simple example of someone being gaslighted.
Okay, simple example. Okay.
We're going to be talking about narcissism. Okay.
Yeah, you look really good today, but the blue doesn't fit.
Okay. Comment and then
it's a compliment, but then it's like a slap also.
So it makes them
sort of like aware of what's happening. Like, oh, does it really look that bad? You start questioning yourself.
Yeah.
And then you like, oh, okay.
You look good today, but somehow that blue doesn't suit you. They kind of make it stand out more in a subtle way.
Yes. Right.
What about narcissism then? They say, how does narcissism tie it, or someone with a narcissistic...
Okay, narcissistic is basically someone who thinks that they know everything, and it's very hard to sort of argue or make sense with these people because they feel like, okay, they are at the top of the world, they know what they're doing, blah, 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 and all that. So sometimes we see these people as, they always come off as rude. Whatever that comes flying out of their mouth is always rude.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that is narcissism in and of itself. The basic of narcissism.
Yes.
So anything that comes across as rude.
Just plain rude.
Right. Now, according to an article published by your organization, given the prevalence of substance use disorder as a coping mechanism for individuals experiencing domestic abuse, what specific considerations do you think or would you consider when working with clients who are simultaneously dealing with substance abuse and the aftermath of domestic violence? And I mean, substance abuse is also very prevalent, and sometimes people, just say anxiolytics, stuff we take for, your alprazolam, your lorazepam.
Yes.
People can get addicted to stuff like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even prescription meds.
Prescription medicine. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so when it comes to substance abuse and the aftermath of domestic violence, I think the first part that needs to be sort of addressed is the domestic violence, because the substance abuse is a coping mechanism to fix as a quick fix. It doesn't really solve the problem. It sort of suppresses whatever they are feeling. And there's no other way for you to sort of deal with that. So you use substances to sort of cover it up. Mm-hmm. So the first part would be to resolve the trauma. And then simultaneously work on the addiction as well.
So basically the person will have to be working with different therapists.
Yeah, so one would be to handle the trauma part. So we have therapies, different types of therapy methods that you can use for this. Mm-hmm. You have hypnotherapy, you have art therapy, music, family constellation therapy, and your general talk therapy as well. So the four that I mentioned earlier, those are all holistic methods that we can use for people who can't verbalize their thoughts. Mm-hmm. And they find it very difficult to actually open up and say, okay, this is the problem, I am getting abused. How do I deal with this? Mm-hmm. So those are some methods that you can use. But if people who are, you put them in a very tight box, and then after a while you open the box and then they become super expressive.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of clients like that who in their normal daily life, they just keep to themselves. But when they come in for therapy, they can go on.
Right. Yeah. Now, when you're talking about clients, let's talk about kids. Kids who see abuse. They say 0 to 7 are the years where your parents do things or you see things, and it plays out in your life later on, or at least that's what neuro-linguistic program tells us.
Yes.
Now there's this new acronym that has been going around for a while, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
And they say it's the go-to or the gold standard for kids and also adults. Your thoughts?
For adults, yes. For kids, I'm 50-50 on this, because kids don't really know how to put that in words yet, because they're still young.
So by kids, I mean teenagers. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, we're talking teenagers, then yes. Then CBT works as well. But again, looking at how they're brought, as in how their upbringing was at home and things like that. So it depends. If they are from an abusive household, most of the time they rather not open up and talk about it. So like I mentioned earlier, those 4 types of therapy: art, music, hypno, and also family constellation. This has different types of tools that you use. Instead of using your conventional talk therapy, this is another way for them to actually verbalize what they're trying to say.
So I'm guessing when it comes to working with kids and adults, it's a totally different area of specialty.
Yes,
yeah,
very much.
So when you talk about areas of specialty, your area of specialty would be?
Okay, mine would be addiction and trauma.
Addiction and trauma.
Yes.
So yours is a two-prong approach, usually.
Two-prong approach.
Addiction and trauma. Now, empowering survivors. Okay, so when you look at empowering survivors, how do you navigate the delicate balance between empowering survivors to take control of their lives? Okay, what you want is to give them back, like you said, they hand you the remote to their lives. You want to give them control of their lives, respecting their autonomy and decision making, especially in situations where there may be safety concerns or external pressures influencing their choices. I know we talked about it very little bit. I'd like to just go back to that.
Okay, so when it comes to giving them the autonomy to take control of their lives, this part is a bit tricky, because you've given this control to someone for so long, and now when you give it back to them, okay, what am I supposed to do with it? Like, sometimes they feel lost. Like, okay, I'm giving you the option now to take this remote control back and do what you want with it, but they become very lost and confused. Like, okay, so now I have the remote, what am I going to do? So when it comes to therapy work, we have to see what is the best possible outcome. At the end of the day, it's the client's choice. They get to choose what they want to do with their life. So what we can do, we can guide them in that direction. You choose what you want. But in order to do that, victims need to come to this awareness that the cycle of abuse needs to stop. Because no one can go and tell them that the cycle of abuse needs to stop. They need to come to that awareness themselves. So it's like trying to drag the horse to the water. If we are going to probably force the victim, okay, come, I pull you, okay, this is the water. But then, if they are not ready to make that first step, then it's a bit impossible for us to do what we want to do for them.
Right. I want to take this one step further, and we've got about 5 minutes left, and I want you to tell us what we can do. So, I mean, to engage help like yours sometimes would cost a lot for some people. They won't be able to afford it. Now, what can people on the periphery, on the sidelines of someone who's going through a similar situation, what can we do as family and friends? You know, we know someone in our family is being abused by their spouses, or maybe they're, you know, if you have a brother and your brother is being abused by his wife, and we haven't even talked about that. Every time we talk about abuse, we always talk about women. Not that that's wrong, but it also happens to men. Of course, it's not as prevalent as women. I'd like to make that clear, state that here, just so we don't get that wrong. So what advice do you have for us with regards?
Okay, so follow the 3 R's: recognize, respond, refer.
There's a lot of 3 R's in this country too.
So for abuse, these are the 3 R's: recognize, respond, and refer. So recognize, when you see a family or a friend who's going through abuse, you will definitely know that something is off. So that is recognize. Respond when they finally come to you and say that, okay, yes, I am going through abuse. Try to remain calm. Try to calm them down and also calm yourself, because at that point everything becomes very emotional, everything becomes very volatile, and then we start making decisions emotionally, and sometimes it may end up bad, because if the abusers are involved and if they are also friends and family, then it becomes a very sticky situation. So what happens then is you have to seek out to, you have organizations like Sisters in Islam, Awam, Women Aid Organization, Talian Kasih. So you have a lot of these available resources at the moment that you can actually call and report.
Right. Now we've got about a minute and a half left, and you know of so many modalities and techniques when it comes to healing, because this is your bread and butter and you do this for a living. Now, what insight can you give all of us? For you, what is the go-to standard with regards to the most effective technique in facilitating the healing and recovery process for anything in this realm of someone being abused? Okay,
so if we're talking about a mental health approach,
we've got about a minute left.
Step would be CBT and narrative therapy.
CBT and
narrative therapy.
CBT and narrative therapy. This is very interesting. Okay.
So narrative therapy is basically to reframe and refocus all those negatives into positives. So we're talking about changing worldviews, perspectives, and because all this while you're in that one lane. So now, as counselors and as mental health practitioners, we have to open up all the lanes. Okay, show you, okay, this, you have other options as well. Like, you know, it's not just a one-way street.
Right. With that, we'd like to thank you for coming in and giving us, welcome. I mean, we didn't quite go in depth with this, but we kind of learned some things today about abuse. But the takeaway here is 2 things, which is go Google CBT or whatever search engine you use. I keep saying Google all the time. Look at CBT and look at narrative therapy. Once again, what's the narrative therapy? Very quickly before we close.
Okay, narrative therapy is basically to reframe and refocus all your negatives into positives. So instead of looking at everything in a one-way street or one-way lane, you can always open up and look at other options. So that is what mental health therapists and practitioners like myself, that's what we do for trauma victims.
Right. With that, we'd like to thank you very much, KAVILAN GUKACUMARAN, taking time off to join us here to talk about abuse, domestic abuse or domestic violence. It's pretty rampant, 22,000 cases from 2020 up until now. Maybe some reading will help us gain more knowledge with regards to this. And if you're looking at therapies, go check out CBT or go research CBT and also narrative therapy. On that note, I'm Gerard Ratnam. This has been The Nation on Bernama TV. Thank you very much for watching. For more information, log on to bernama.com. Bye-bye.